Well, it's 2013, around August 30th, and Charlie's behind the camera, and I'm grateful for him to do this, to sort of document where I've been living for almost 25 years. And I sort of felt I wanted to just tell you why I moved here in Laurel Canyon, what it was like living here, and why I'm leaving. I had never dreamt that my career would take on the proportions that it did. I never thought I could afford a home, but I did know that I wanted to be a comedian, and I did know that I loved rock and roll, and I did know when I got the breaks and I was ready for them, I paid my dues many years, and I was told by an accountant, "You're wasting your money living in an apartment, buy a home." You know, I never heard that sentence before. I asked somebody, a realtor friend of mine, I said, I want to live in a house that has history, that's secluded, and near the Sunset Strip. This house was built around 26 or 27, around the same time the Chateau Marmont was, and Sunset Towers, two hotels that are world famous and that I love. But I did live in Laurel Canyon. I did live a couple miles away from where my man Keaton shot. And I did have Buster's wife over here, and I lived down the block from Lenny's mom and helped her with other people. And I got to meet everybody I wanted to meet. I've shown a lot of pretty hip people this house, this museum, and it's funny, a lot of rock and roll stars don't like to see themselves when they're 20, so I've stopped doing that. Hey, look at you at 18. All right, where's the door? They don't want to see. I don't mind seeing myself younger, but that's just me. To be truthful, when I bought this house, I was maybe about 3.5 years away from bottoming out on crystal meth. So one of my addictions was buying, and I bought things. It's the same old story. You struggle for a long time. All of a sudden, you have a ton of money, and what you're not being destructive with, the money, you want to buy stuff, and I did, and I still have it. I'm very lucky. I would buy anything back from when I bought this house in '89, anything that just hit me, and I had the bread to do it, I did it. This was a high point of my career, 1989 in December. I sold out Carnegie Hall, and did almost 2.5 hours. I'm proud of it, 2 standing ovations. And it was one of those great nights. This is my Carnegie Hall pass and the Carnegie Hall booklet, and of course I put Lenny played Carnegie Hall, of course, so obviously I'm a big Lenny Bruce fan and got a chance to know Lenny's mom, and I'm very close to Kitty Bruce. The goal of this house was to put things in that made no sense being together, like, wow, what's this wooden Chrysler chair? Oh, there's a Carnegie Hall picture. I mean, I did PR for 45 years, so I was on the cover of the Chicago Tribune, and so was Lenny, and Lenny played Chicago as much as I did. I played more. Lenny died at 40, I'm still alive and playing there in 2 months. So I got a picture of Lenny in his little silk black suit, and I got a picture of me in my spaceship outfits, and that's just because it meant a lot to me that I was compared a lot to Lenny in his style and whatever. Put this Chrysler building back. Got just a couple of things here I did. You know, Larry David and I know each other since we were 12 years old, and this is one of his many great, this was I think the first year of Curb Your Enthusiasm in 2000, and of course he signed it to me. This David Brenner was like a brother to me. He's still around, I love him, and he wants to murder me for it, but it's the greatest caricature of David Brenner, and every time he knows I have it. Now David, everyone will know for the rest of eternity how handsome you were. I got just a couple of new pictures because how many can you use? This one here, it's Robert Plant back in '75, and it's called I Am a Golden God. Peter Simon's a photographer, and there's the famous Sunset Towers, which was built the same year this house was built. To me, this is an amazing shot because not only does it epitomize rock, this guy, in many ways, but this hotel, which is now totally renovated and beautiful, they have this hanging in the lobby. So I love this photograph tremendously. I love angels for some reason. I'm not deeply religious, but this is like from the 17th century, and it didn't come with a lamp back then, of course, but we use it as lamps, and when we move, we'll probably use it. This I ripped off the stage from Anything But Love, a series I did with Jamie Lee Curtis in the late 80s and early 90s, and when we got canceled, I told the prop guy, I'm putting that in my trunk, so, you know, come get me. And this is Carnegie Hall, I'd say at the turn of the century, you know, like around 1900, pretty cool. Kate Simons did the definitive book on Bob Marley. In fact, Ringo Starr, and as long as I'm name dropping here, gave us, my wife and I, Joyce and I, the Kate Simon book, and he signed it, you know, happy wedding, love, the other Richard. All right, fine. So I'm bigger than Ringo for that, at least on that one book. But this is a really cool shot of Miles. Sad, but you know, it's almost like he's looking through his entire amazing life. Glad he lived that long, to be honest. Guys like that, living the way he did, you know, were gone in their early 20s. You know, I have pictures that mean a lot to me. Mickey Mantle and I both drunk in 1990. He let me wear his cowboy hat. I was at Mantle's restaurant on Central Park South. It's no longer there, sadly. That's a shot with John Ritter, who passed on way too young, with Jamie Lee and I. John was one of the producers. This is one of many I'll have in the house. That's the Cavern, the famous club where they started in Liverpool. This is me sitting next to the President of Ohio State and the President of the United States. I helped the Clintons for about 12 years. This is me and my buddy Johnny Winters, who died last week as I speak, who became like a father figure to me. He was sober 53 years. His parents, his family, I had some that were, but mostly never were supportive. He was a drunk like I was, and I'm in recovery, but he helped me in that area. He helped me free associate and feel confident about acting like a jazz guy on stage. And he became a father figure to me, just like David Brenner became a brother to me. I have a brother, but who really understood me, and Phyllis Diller became a mother figure to me. And luckily, Phyllis died at 94 or 5, and Jonathan in the late 80s, so I was lucky to have them. Come around here, this is just something that I'm proud of. This is a little shot from on the set of Robin Hood Men in Tights, and Mel signed it. A neurotic Jewish storm. I'll take it from Mel. This is from the Rolling Stone book of comics, and actually it was my idea, and you'll see upstairs of me. I love Monk, I love his story, and I put myself in the photographer Bonnie Schiffman made this whole thing happen. She made me into Monk on that famous Scream photo, and then there's Johnny and Robin. And this is an interesting, I framed anything that meant something to me. This is Lenny Bruce. It might be a reflection, getting busted, and there's George Carlin, who was in the audience at the time, who was probably just starting as a comic, but loved Lenny, and he says, if Lenny's going to jail, I'm going to jail with him. And that's obviously a cop, I think. Looks like a cop, and I've known a few. So there's Lenny and his young George Carlin hanging with his mentor. It's a great picture. This was, Hunter Thompson was a fan of mine, and this was a famous essay he wrote about Nixon, that he was a crook, and he signed it to me. Bob Gruen is one of the most famous rock photographers in history, and he finally shot me, because I have so many shots that he took of all these famous rock groups. This is my wife, Joyce, who I love more than anything, backstage at the Club Caroline's after the show, because I'm smiling, because before the show, that's pretty much my attitude, that's on stage. Finally, this is sort of an interesting shot. I just did a supporting role on a Peter Bogdanovich movie. This is Peter Bogdanovich and his former wife, Sybil Shepherd, who plays my wife, and cowboy Jewish Lewis here, who seemingly lost 130 pounds for the role. I pulled a De Niro. I was 8 pounds for the role. And this is the first AD who's pregnant, astonished at how thin anyone can be and why they would even lose weight for a supporting role. That's because I'm not well. And the first time I wore a cowboy hat, I felt like it was a 10-gallon skull cap. Good night, everybody. I started at this club in 1971, the Improvisation, 44th and 9th, no longer there. And David Garr, who passed away, a famous rock photographer. I saw this in the New York Times. I bought it, and this is one of my idols, John Lennon, standing in front of the club where I got my start. And you can see close here, Andy Kaufman, who played the congas in his act. You can see that he's waiting to go on, or he has his props back there. It's an astonishing picture. This is something I bought from an artist who I don't know, and there's a couple of pieces upstairs. This I bought from this young artist 20 years ago, because when I started, as all of us start in the arts, we don't know anybody, we don't know if we're going to do it, we think we're in a dreamland. And when I used to walk around New York going, what am I going to do? How am I going to get on stage? Who do I call? I knew nobody. And I would see these big doors in New York, like in Rome, and they had big keyholes, and I went, I don't know who's behind any fucking door. I don't know anybody. And when I saw this, it just reminded me, I was already, I guess, I hate the word a celebrity, but I was by the time I saw this, so I just wanted to remind myself how hard it was and how hard I worked. I have plenty of this guy hanging over the house, Pedro Freeberg, Mexican genius, and I hung it this way particularly because, not just because of my alcoholism, but because I wanted to always believe that I would land on my feet. And this is, as you can see, angels are on the wing, and I hung it that it's going down, but it'll never crash because of these angels, and it's one of my favorite pieces. This is just one of the days I worked with President Clinton, and this is me at Ohio State, me introducing Gore and Clinton to the president, and that's Clinton talking to on the Oval, and the football players. And I got so many letters from Clinton and Gore and his ex-wife, Gore's ex-wife, and it was astonishing. To this day, I say, what if it was Abe Lincoln or Woodrow Wilson? I mean, I used to be able to talk to Bill Clinton about women. I once brought a woman to the White House on the way to the rehab. He didn't know that. And I wanted to take a picture in front of the Kennedy desk. And I was with my ex-girlfriend, who was nice enough to get me to rehab. And I called him Mr. President. I said, Mr. President, what am I going to do? I mean, I just want you and me and Kennedy's desk. Just leave it to me. And just before Sharon took the picture, I don't know how Clinton did it. He has a way with women. He shoved my ex out of the shot. I got the picture 5 months later. It has to go through security and all the whatever they call it. And you just see my ex-girlfriend's nipple, Clinton's nose, and just me. So when I tell people this is me and Clinton, they go, that's a Picasso rendering. And my ex keeps asking for the picture, but she'll never get it. Like I told you about this guy Fornasetti, this is a Fornasetti. He made clothes. He made this is a Fornasetti. This is a Fornasetti. This is like, he took some New York Times front page from the 40s, this is the 50s. Hirschfeld, as everyone knows, did mainly people in the arts, and this is a lithograph of one of my idols, Buster Keaton. And this is, I bought Ringo Starr, who's a friend of mine, helped me a lot during my recovery. He's been sober for over a quarter of a century. And I made him sign it, and it says, Richard, this looks more like you than me. I love you, man. Ringo, he hates this, Ringo. I love it. He can't even look at it. So it's his fault. This, if you can come close here, here's a Jack Kerouac and Gabriel Kerouac. They wrote out a check $9 to Nunzio's Liquor Store. Hey, oh, I can relate to that. And this is a check that Lenny Bruce wrote to get cash from, I guess, someplace in Chicago. He lived for a while. Procol Harum's a whole other story. I know them. They're friends of mine. They're still around. They should be in the Hall of Fame. I love them. I actually even wrote a funny song with Keith Reed, the lyricist. You know them from A Whiter Shade of Pale. That's their one of the most famous songs ever written. In fact, when it came out, Mick Jagger and McCartney rode around in a limo, stoned out of their mind, as legend has it, saying, "Where did this song come from? Who could write a song like that?" Procol Harum. This is the only poster that Bill Graham, the famous promoter, Woodstock, you name it, he owned the Fillmore and other clubs in San Francisco, and this is the only poster he had in his office of all of these billions of photos. This was the only one he had over his desk, and it's a very, very important photo. When I was a kid, I watched Yankee Doodle Dandy once 27 times in a row in 1 week. I related to his passion for the arts in this movie. I love the movie, I love Cagney, and this movie is one of my favorites, so I got to post it. Henry Diltz is a famous rock photographer, and he was down there, and Ronnie had a deal with Gibson, and he says he's a wreck, he hates photo sessions, he loves you, you make him laugh, come in and make him laugh. So I came in, I saw this picture, and I says, wait a minute, I got an idea for the industrial show. Would you mind saying Ronnie Wood plays Gibson, Richard Lewis plays Neurotic, and they actually blew that up as a poster for the Gibson Industrial Show. So I was supposed to go to the Dodger Stadium to see this. I couldn't take it anymore. The crowds, so I never showed up. So when I went to get the picture signed at the hotel in Beverly Hills, Ronnie wrote, "Richard, where were you? Love, Ronnie." I was so embarrassed because I never went to the concert, but I went to enough concerts. This is New York City, so I love, I'm afraid to climb the stairs, let alone, drink some rum at 90 floors up. I don't know how these guys did it. A lot of balls. A couple of little things here. This is a John Lennon lithograph. And very briefly, this is done by a friend of mine who passed away, who was in Anything But Love, Rick Frank. And he would take 40s and 50s real photographs. These are his relatives that look exactly like this, and do photographs of them. I mean, paintings and oils and whatever else the medium. And I bought 5 or 6 for an AIDS charity that they have for him. Here's a great wall of photographs. Brad Garrett, when he was playing, and he won an Emmy for playing Jackie Gleason, I was giving him a lot of moral support, and he sent me a photograph of Jackie Gleason backstage in his dressing room before his show. This is Philip Burke, who's a great artist, and I bought this from him, 1982, of Nicholson, and he just nailed them. This is a William Claxton, famous photographer. This is Lenny in a wheelchair after he took acid, apparently. But this is him in a wheelchair, and he only lived about a mile from this house. This is a John Belushi lithograph at the Chateau Marmont. This is an Annie Leibovitz picture of Jamie Lee and I. This is a drawing of Larry David by Mary Beth McKenzie. Huge canvas, it was gigantic, of this painting, done. And I finally gave it to Larry David as a present for his marriage and his children. I said, I want your children to live with it. But Mary Beth gave me this, and I sort of dig it, because this is how she started to see him, because they used to live near each other in New York in the 70s and 80s, and he would sit for her for hours. So this is her practice. She must have had many of these, but she gave me that to thank me. Someone came into this house and actually thought the house was so crazy and cool that, in fact, this is really, if you can see this Larry David here, and look how big it was. And this is upstairs. Oh God, nightmare. My wife cannot wait to have just a hammock. Believe me. But she loves the stuff. It's just, can you live here? Don Rickles, he walked just about here and he looked at me and he went, you don't live in this fun house, do you? He couldn't believe anyone would live here, but he was so impressed with the stuff. He bought me an antique dog, which is really cool. And I call him Rickles, and he looks like a dog and he barks and it sounds like Don. Ah, shut up, Don. I don't know. Get back in there. No more food. Here, have some food. Philip Burke, who did a lot of stuff for Rolling Stone, and he did this for an article I wrote for Penthouse. And I asked him why, at Springsteen, I compared Springsteen's take on women and Dylan. And I said, why do I have two heads? Because his son said, he's crazy. Lewis is crazy. He must have at least two heads. So that's why he did that. This is of note, which is funny for me. My first huge cover was Esquire magazine, and when I landed in San Francisco, I went right to the magazine stand, and I see it, and I go, where the hell am I? And then I get closer, and there I am. I look like a Jewish spider. It was the smallest image, but it was about how do you get jobs and time. The time is clicking. So, but this was my first big cover, 1989, and I was proud to be on it. And this is just a. See, some of these things aren't valuable. They're just valuable to me. This was obviously my first big cover. This is just I just tore this off of a Rolling Stone, the greatest guitarist of all time. I believe that to be true, and I liked how it was laid out, and I framed it. But it's not valuable, just valuable to me. This is Herman Leonard's one of the great photographers in the world, and he passed on at like 88 this year. And we became great friends. Good friends. And this is Ella Fitzgerald at the Downbeat nightclub, which is still there in the Village. And you can see her, young Ella, and being like seen like by Duke Ellington and Benny Goodman, and they're just in awe of her. And it's a beautiful shot. And so I bought a lot of Herman Leonard's. This is a bar area up here. But Jonathan Winters, who was a fabulous band. This is one of his crazier ones. He used to mock the Klan. This is a real Klan coin. This is called Farrakhan and the Token Hunky, and the police dogs have bitten off all their hands, and Watermelon Moon, and he did a lot of anti-Klan pictures. Now look, this is something that my wife, I hid it out here, but this is Carl Totolo, my buddy. I bought about 40 of his paintings. This is Bob Gruen, the famous rock photographer, did the John Lennon shots and everybody else. And this is me high. So I needed to remind myself, how I used to be a lot. And I was pretty loaded there with Ronnie too. I did a reading on a record of a Jack Kerouac unpublished work, and this is how Jack used to write his books. As a present, the producer gave me a photostat of Jack's paper. So, it's not the real deal, but it's cool. We love Frank Lloyd Wright, my wife and I, and we went to a very famous house, the Ennis Brown house. We had a 4-hour tour of the house. It's an amazing house, and this is the stone that the house is made of. And he sort of guilt-tripped me into buying one of the old bricks, to help the foundation, but I gladly did. It was an amazing tour, and Frank Lloyd Wright is quite something. This bathroom is so trippy. I took a lot of showers in here. I was lucky to get out of there alive, to be honest with you, but the fact I could be in here, it's really tremendous for sex, I might add. This is something when Ringo Starr came over the house, he saw this, This is, he flipped out. This was Jimi Hendrix doing a promotional thing, a Christmas thing for Axis Bold as Love. And I said, here, Ringo, you can have it. And then just about 5 minutes after he left, I went back on eBay and I bought it immediately. There was no way I wasn't, you know, a little obsessive. So we both have it. I'll take that, Ringo. This was embarrassing during the Kuwait War. In Newsweek, here these poor heroes going over there, and they did an album me calling my shrink. You know, I think they might have saved it for another cover, but there I am. And this is very cool, the opening of Anything But Love. Lucille Ball wrote to Jamie Lee Curtis, want to tell you how much we enjoyed your show. Keep up the good work, and please tell Richard Lewis he is wonderful. Love, Lucy. And then at the time, her husband, Gary Morton. A legendary stickball player in New York and New Jersey, and I beat almost everybody, including Pete Rose. In fact, he was so humiliated he signed my bat. Pete, I have something to tell you. You're a piece of shit. Cocky bastard. Every rock and roll guy has to have a picture like this, and even though I'm a comedian, I got mine. That's right. So for all you doubters, here's a couple of things I want to show you. This is the kind. I was mentioning how I work for the Clintons. Bill wrote me letters even like 4 days before he even left office. The guy liked me. Can I tell you? This is just to show you a little thing. And this is called Totolo, and as a present of me being a patron, he did this thing. Each frame is individually painted, and he made like comicus, like I was Julius Caesar's jester. I guess I must show my mother. She's a little hidden. She meant well. I always tried to help her, put her in shows, but this was a Valentine's Day in some magazine. And they shot this, and then a moment later she tried to knife me. But it's part of humor. That was her humor. Shot? No, she didn't. I love you, Blanche. You meant well. And I did too. We both screwed up. But we meant well, and I love you. I hope you're at peace. So that's that. As we come up here, I goofed on myself by making an actual photograph, comedian with siblings, when I was a year old, my brother Bob and my sister Janet. And if you look in my eyes there, it looked like I was pretty freaked out already and I wanted to leave. You can catch my eyes on this guy. This is me on tour when I'm like 26 years old with Sonny Bono. This is rock and roll, me and Sean Young. This was a gift given to me, another gift, Ronnie Wood. He surprised me and gave me this. This is a great, very famous shot of Robert Kennedy running for president in '68, just from his back at Berkeley. It's really a magnificent photograph. An interesting shot. It's the first. This is before Barbra Streisand ever went on stage. She opened up for Phyllis Diller in Greenwich Village. Phyllis signed it, but she also put from Barbara. Of course, I know her vaguely, not even. I mean, I didn't say hi, but she didn't sign. But Phyllis signed "Love Barbara" and Phyllis, which is so ridiculous. But it's an amazing shot, actually. And one other great shot, which was in Rolling Stone, was Larry David and I at a Playboy Club here, circa 1980 in LA. He seems to look, you know, not uncomfortable, but I had no trouble smiling. This was given to me along with many others by Lenny Bruce's daughter, Kitty, who's a good friend of Joyce and I, and this is one of the great shots of him. This is just a year or two before he died, when he was on trial endlessly, and in front of the cop and the judge, he's doing a small penis joke, which pretty fearless, as far as I'm concerned. This is my favorite picture that she gave me. I'll just have to show you this one thing, because it's really beautiful. A friend of mine, Rick Frank, who is an actor, and he passed away, and I had showed you that he can take pictures of people in this, like his family, and do in oil. This was like a postcard sent to him from a friend about an hour before he died, he knew I was an alcoholic. He says, I want you to wake up feeling half happy, not half empty. And the estate gave me this. And you know, he was a beautiful actor and a beautiful guy. When Joplin and Hendrix died, I mean, this is what Rolling Stone looked like back in the 60s, you know, and so this is what I would have bought back in college. This is an office, and this is here back when the house was built in '26. It was like a sun terrace. It's sort of cool. It's like it's a ceiling, but I don't know. You know, it's all crazy. And what I did was, here's an example. I every time I loved something, like a movie that I went wild over, boom. All these are books that'll go into my library eventually, and there's just too many things to describe, but you know. Obviously, when all of these things are hidden, this is a cool room because it's empty. All you do is see outside, and from here you can actually see the Pacific Ocean in downtown LA over there. I'm just happened to pass this. Ringo Starr called me on stage to help sing with a little help from my friends. So that was sort of a cool night. Wasn't too embarrassed. Pretty trippy. As we walk into the kitchen, a friend of mine gave me a picture of Lenny Bruce dressed as a cop. And the thing that's something people should know, if you don't know anything about him, he loved the law. He respected the law, and he got fucked over by the First Amendment. That's what's so heartbreaking. He died from drugs at 40, but he was screwed over by the First Amendment, and that's what's so sad about it. He really loved this country and the law, and it's the very thing that he loved that killed him, amongst other things, drugs. So this is the kitchen. Couple of little things, same deal. I hang up things that are meaningful for me, whether it's a little Christmas card from Jackson Browne, or a letter that Bruce Springsteen hand writes to me, which is like blew my mind. This was an artist's rendering of all the cast members of Curb Your Enthusiasm. And of course, I'm next to a dog, which freaks me out. I did a Snickers commercial about 2011 with Roseanne Barr, and the photographer was pretty damn good. He scribbled his name, but he took this photograph in Vancouver, or outside of Vancouver, so I got that. I did a pilot back in '78. It was a horrible pilot, and that was my former manager. He passed away, and now it's David Brenner, my buddy, came to visit me on the set, and the pilot was horrible and never went anywhere. This is sort of cool. We went to visit Ronnie Wood and his now wife, and he just took out a pad and he wrote, "Drawn in the Dark, November 2011, Ronnie." So I'm sitting there going, wow. I mean, you know, so I framed it. I'm not going to frame that. This was a tribute to a very famous 60s icon, Mort Saul, political satirist. Albert Brooks and Drew, he was an agent, as Hugh Hefner, he showed up, and Kevin, and my buddy George, and Norm Crosby and Leno, and Shelley Berman, an iconic comedian in the 50s and 60s, and Jonathan Winters, my buddy, and Harry. It's Harry wearing, why he's dressed up like a Scotchman for no reason, I don't know. I once put a guy's shop in one of my movies, one movie for Saturday Night Live, and I said, I want that Lenny Bruce's eyes. It took me 20 years of calling him every week. I want the eyes. And he finally sent it to me because he was going to kill himself. He couldn't take me hawking him so much. So this is it, small kitchen, and then you saw this outside. I haven't gone out there. I went out there once because I thought I heard a bee outside. That's how frightening I would be. The door was closed and I heard a bee outside. Why would I open the door to let the bee in? Okay. Must say, when I was a little boy, 3 years old, I grew up listening to Vin Scully, the voice of the Dodgers, and I wrote a book back in 1999, and I wrote an essay about moving here and hearing his voice, and he's still as of now, 2013, the voice of the Dodgers. And he wrote me a beautiful letter. I'm not going to frame this, you know what I mean? That's what happened to that's why I did it. It's more of the same. Wherever there was space, I'd put something. When Joe Walsh and I were crazy drug addicts, once we were at the same restaurant and the waiter brought me over a check for zero money. It said from Joe Walsh, absolutely nothing. And with 2 zeros. We found it funny then, but I wonder who drove us home. Johnny Carson signed a TV guy with admiration. This is some interesting stuff up here. When I was, before I met my wife to be, I used to have pads with my name on it, and I would write. It was a lie, of course. I was sort of a womanizer. And I put, I swear I'm very decent, with my number, with my name there. But of course that meant, when can you come over, and who's bringing the grass? But my wife, Joyce, saved this for me, and on our first anniversary, she framed it, and she, you know, I never felt I would be understood by someone who wouldn't be threatened by how crazy I used to be. That's when you get married. This is really a great caricature of Phyllis Diller, who became like a mother to Joyce and I, and when she heard about my house, she never saw it. It was hard for her to walk the stairs, but she wrote me a letter saying, I can't believe I'm not in your museum, so she sent me that and that. And also great letters of encouragement to go back on stage after I took years off, after I bottomed out. And she was a great, great hero of mine.
Yeah. Time keeps on ticking, the world spin around and around. Every time we close our eyes, we wake up on the other side.
That was a dark gray window, and I called the Frank Lloyd Wright estate and took the gray window out and put that in, so it sort of opened up this little, because it's a small house. You know, I've been a comic now, as we shoot, almost 44, 45 years, and people come over to you, famous people, politicians, heads of stage, stars, you name it. So I'm going over my notes in a bar in Washington, and this guy comes over. He looked familiar. It was a mentalist, Uri Geller, Israeli cat, and he can bend things and do all sorts of weird shit. But he was famous. And I went, "Oh, Mr. Geller, how are you?" He said, "I'm a big fan, Richard." I went, "Thank you." And I take my spoon out of my cappuccino and I put it down. And I said, "It's really nice to meet you." And I turned right back, and here it was, bent right before my eyes. And he signs it for Richard Uri Geller. So my wife, who doesn't cook much, I didn't marry her for her cooking, and we have someone come and dust. I married her for other reasons. And so she said, "You know, I'm going to polish silver today." Didn't do a lot, but she polished this. For Richard, yeah, bro. I'm going to have to call Uri Geller and ask him to sign another spoon, and if you don't think that's too embarrassing. One of my favorite rooms in the house, I think this sold me. To have a bathroom, I can sit on the toilet and see every ex-girlfriend if they're coming out to get me, every doctor. I can see the deli making my sandwich. I can see, if you could turn, you can see LA over there to the left. Century City's over there where I used to live. I used to live in the penthouse in one of those buildings. It was one of the tallest high-rises in LA, and then I moved here. I'll show you this because it's sort of interesting. I'm a very crazy, drug-addicted nightclub owner, a restaurant guy who loved Lenny Bruce and hung with him and shot heroin with him, had this over his bed, and he used to come see me play in New York, this guy. He just left to see me and very little. And I saw this and he says, "Do you want this, Richard?" And I went, "Yeah." I mean, it's sort of a strange piece. It's sort of psychedelic, but it's Lenny. And he gave it to me and I took it back on the plane with me. And this is my first Tonight Show on my dressing room door back in the early 70s. I ripped that off real fast. And when I moved out here, I was broke and I had more than this, but I basically had very few items. I had a fan, a frog, and a bat, a couple of things. So I made it like a thing. Like I made a joke out of it. My first apartment, it was $140 a month next to a whorehouse, which it was on La Brea and Sunset. This is a bedroom. And this is Lena Horne, great jazz artist, with her arranger and writer Billy Strayhorn, who was a gay African American in the 50s who came out, and that was pretty tough back then. And that's her in Vegas in the dressing room. And this is a very famous Marilyn Monroe, seemingly happy for a minute. This no photographer name, John and Yoko, and they're loving. And this one Joyce and I bought together. This is very famous, but I wanted to buy a real photograph of it. This was at Ciro's nightclub, where the Comedy Store is now, and the deal was Sophia Loren had to date Jane Mansfield, whose daughter is Hargitay, who wins all those Emmys for that cop show in New York. Terrific actress. Anyway, when her boyfriend went to take a leak, she scooted over and all the photographers came in, and all it does is it just need that one frame and that eyeball looking down. People have different versions of what she's thinking. Sophia Loren is so beautiful, and if she didn't have such a tight dress on, she would give her a run for her money with her bosoms, believe me. When I bought this house and I got this bed, I sat up here and I just couldn't believe that I bought this house. And I'll be a little meaningful. When I was broke, and I was broke for like 17 or so years, I was at David Brenner's house in New York, and he was rich. Well, yeah, he was a star in the 70s. And he said, I bought this house it was a townhouse, 3 stories, and a beautiful roof. Everything was magnificent. And I said, God, how do you ever buy any of this? I mean, to myself, he says, I bought this with jokes. And when I was ready to pretty well cash it in with all those drugs, I was looking in this mirror right here, and I was just about ready. I thought I was going to get a heart attack, and I said to myself, I bought this stuff with jokes, and I'm going to put this shit up my nose and die. And I called 2 friends, and they whisked me off to Cedars. And that was August 4th, 1994. But it was thinking about David Brenner's line that really kicked in, that I was a fucking moron to think that I would want to kill myself with the stuff that the guy on Breaking Bad cooks. So I didn't smoke it, I just snorted everything, but no more. Paprika sometimes to get a little high on Jewish holidays. My wife, she doesn't. I sneak down when she's making pot roast, and little paprika. Looney, look in the camera. Luna, look. All right, this is same day. This is Bella Luna Lewis. She's a Maltese mix. We got her off the street. She wants to leave now and go upstairs to my wife. And I will let you go. You want to go to your mother? You want to go? Go on. Women. This was the first house I ever bought. And I'm going to be leaving a lot of images behind and selling them and giving them away because I don't want to live like this anymore. And my wife loves the images, but I want to give her a house that she deserves. I mean, I don't need to have 10 pictures of images from Last Tango in Paris, so I got to pick one shot of Brando. Same with Keaton, same with Cassavetes. I just got to moderate, basically, something that it's a hard word for me. So until I get into the car and the moving trucks are out there, adios from Laurel Canyon.